Welcome to Recurring Insight. It's the beginning of your upkeep, so it's time for another episode. This video focuses on 5 Razaketh decks, which cheat Razaketh the Foul-Blooded into play to assemble a win. The decks we'll be looking at are Adaptive Markov by Ira Rule, Dab to Win by Flash Andretti, Scavenger Hunt by Sentipedantic, Raspberry Jam by Noobzors, and Razakats by Shaber. As Razaketh is only the facilitator of the combos, let's look at the combos used in the decks. To start, the Worldgorger Dragon combos with any reanimation enchantment. If you're unfamiliar with the combo, Animate Dead or another reanimation enchantment returns the Worldgorger Dragon to the field. The ETB trigger exiles Animate Dead, which causes the Worldgorger Dragon to be sacrificed and all your permanents to return to the battlefield. Animate Dead then brings the Worldgorger Dragon back and restarts the loop. It causes your permanents to be repeatedly exiled and returned to the battlefield. Only Dab to Win runs this combo. The next combo consists of Leonin Relic Warder and any reanimation enchantment. It functions similar to the Worldgorger Dragon combo, but on a smaller scale. Animate Dead brings back Leonin Relic Warder, and the ETB exiles Animate Dead. This causes Leonin Relic Warder to be sacrificed, which returns Animate Dead to the field and restarts the loop. While this doesn't generate infinite mana, there's also no risk of removal causing you to lose your permanents. This combo is run in Adaptive Markov, Dab to Win, Raspberry Jam, and Scavenger Hunt. Razakats was previously running this combo, but has dropped it in favor of Forbidden Tutor lines. Adaptive Markov runs the Underworld Breach combo including Lion's Eye Diamond and Wheel of Fortune. This lets you cast Wheel of Fortune, recast and crack Lion's Eye Diamond to recast Wheel of Fortune. It also runs Angel's Grace to keep you from losing by drawing out. While Dab to Win also runs the 3 previous cards, it runs Kozilek Butcher of Truth, which complicates the combo. Instead, you can use Doom Whisperer and Children of Corliss to repeatedly surveil and mill your library. At that point, there are a number of routes to victory. While this does have the benefit of not providing your opponents fresh hands, it requires more moving pieces to assemble a win. Edgar Markov also runs Oathsworn Vampire, which combos with Blood Artist and Phyrexian Altar or Carnival of Souls. With Edgar Markov's Eminence ability, Phyrexian Altar and Carnival of Souls lets you repeatedly cast and sacrifice Oathsworn Vampire to drain your opponents with Blood Artist. It's important to note that when using Carnival of Souls, another sacrifice outlet is required. The next 2 combos are only run in Scavenger Hunt. Earthcraft and Squirrel's Nest lets you generate unbounded squirrel tokens by using Earthcraft to tap each token created by Squirrel's Nest to untap the land enchanted by Squirrel's Nest. This combo could slot into Anafenza relatively well, but it is not being run. It's possible that Anafenza has excluded it to keep the density of stacks pieces high. Scavenger Hunt also runs Karmic Guide, which combos with Yannick, Scavenging Sentinel, and a sacrifice outlet. Yannick's ETB exiles Karmic Guide, then sacrifice Yannick to return Karmic Guide to the battlefield, which in turn causes Yannick to exile Karmic Guide and restart the loop. The only combo Anafenza runs consists of Brought-Back, Eternal Witness, and Lion's Eye Diamond. Starting with LED in the graveyard, Eternal Witness brings back Lion's Eye Diamond to your hand. Recast LED, sacrifice Eternal Witness to Razaketh, then cast Brought-Back to return Eternal Witness to the battlefield and target Brought-Back with the Enter the Battlefield trigger. Holding priority with the ETB trigger on the stack, crack LED and sack Ewit. You can then use Brought-Back to return them to the battlefield and restart the loop. The final 2 combos are only run in Razakets. The Forbidden Tutor lines let you exile your deck and use Thassa's Oracle to win the game. It also runs the Bomberman combo. Sacrificing LED generates 3 mana of any color, and Auriok Salvagers lets you return it to the battlefield for only 1 and a white. While this combo can be used in the other decks, only Razakats has an outlet for the infinite mana in the command zone. While the combos can be assembled without Razaketh, when Razaketh is used, it's rarely just tutoring for the necessary pieces. There are Razaketh lines that can generate necessary mana or additional bodies, and I'll make a note of them later in the video, but we won't be going over the specific lines. I'll just point out the card when we go over it. Moving on from the combos, we're going to look at the cards run in all of the decks before moving on to the differences. There aren't many cards run in all of the decks due to the differing color identities, so this will be short. Additionally, due to the differing color identities, I'll be skipping the mana bases. As Razaketh decks, they all run a healthy amount of reanimation and recursion, including Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead, and Reanimate. As many of the lines to generate more mana include LED, all of the decks run Silence. Also being run is Dark Confidant, as it's a consistent source of card draw on a sacrificable body. In the tutor department, the standard Black Tutors, Entomb, and Enlightened Tutor are all being run. All of the decks also run the 2 best mana rocks, as well as Lion's Eye Diamond, as LED can be used in Razaketh lines to generate additional mana if needed. The biggest factors in the differences are the commander, color identity, and speed. The Mardu decks are the fastest, with Adaptive Markov being faster than Dabduin, followed by Razakats, with the Abzan decks being the slowest. It's easiest to split the reanimation into the decks that run green and the ones that don't. Kaalia incentivizes playing larger creatures that can be cheated into play, so in place of blue counterspells, Dabduin runs more reanimation in case these creatures are removed. Both Dabduin and Adaptive Markov run Underworld Breach, as they're the only decks that have access to it. Adaptive Markov contains more low CMC creatures, so it also runs Lurrus of the Dream Den. The green decks have access to Life and Death, which reanimates and provides sacrifice fodder for Razaketh. Interestingly, Anafenza is the only green deck not running Noxious Revival, and only Scavenger Hunt runs Reap, and there isn't any obvious reason for the exclusions. Scavenger Hunt and Anafenza both run Eternal Witness, which Razakats has dropped in favor of Lurrus of the Dream Den. Lurrus of the Dream Den appears to have more utility than Eternal Witness, grinding value as the game goes on, so I would have expected both of the Abzan decks to be running it. Finally, Raspberry Jam runs Loyal Retainers in lieu of Necromancy, which is present in all of the decks. This allows Raspberry Jam to spend less mana on the combo turn. To get cards in the graveyard in order to be reanimated, the faster decks run ways to discard cards. Adaptive Markov runs the highest density as it's the fastest deck, and Kaalia can cheat Razaketh into play. Dabduin does run Faithless Looting, but that's the only one. Razakats runs 2 discard outlets, as Careful Study and Ghostly Pilferer provide good card selection. Ghostly Pilferer can even be a source of card advantage in creature-light metas. The Abzan decks don't run any. Next, we move on to creatures that serve as finishers for the ETB or LTB loops previously mentioned. Edgar Markov and Nikara Lair Scavenger synergize well with Blood Artist, which explains why Adaptive Markov and Scavenger Hunt are the only decks running it. Kaalia runs Bogardan Hellkite and Dragon Tempest for their synergy with the World Gorger Dragon combo, and for a hasty Kaalia. Scavenger Hunt runs Good Fortune Unicorn, which provides card draw bound by life total with Nikara Lair Scavenger and a sack outlet on the field. Razaketh lines require life, and the fastest decks supplement their life total. The best of these is Children of Corliss. Anafenza runs it as part of a combo discussed earlier to get infinite tutors with Razaketh. Edgar Markov also runs Vampires with lifelink as both Razaketh fodder and incidental life gain. The interaction is mostly defined by what colors the decks have access to. Razakats has access to the best removal, while Raspberry Jam and Anafenza only get Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy. The non-blue decks supplement their lacking stack interaction with removal. The most notable includes are Captivating Vampire and Adaptive Markov due to Edgar Markov's synergy with vampires, Ulvenwald Tracker in Anafenza due to the Hate Bear strategy, and Cut and Ribbons and Searing Touch in Kaalia as an infinite mana outlet. The stack-based interaction is largely dominated by Razakats, which has access to counterspells. It's notable that it only includes 8 pieces of stack interaction, which is 2 to 3 below the norm for blue decks. The Mardu decks run more stack-based interaction than the Abzan decks, as they have access to both Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast. Dabduin, being slower than Edgar Markov, also runs Abeyance and Burnout. The Abzan decks are forced to settle for Veil of Summer and, in the case of Raspberry Jam, Autumn's Veil. The Mardu and Abzan decks supplement their interaction with stacks pieces. Adaptive Markov and Dabduin, being more proactive, run fewer stacks pieces. Dabduin runs stacks pieces that actively slow down your opponents, while Adaptive Markov runs only Grand Abolisher and Ranger Captain of Eos to protect its own game plan. The Abzan decks run more stacks pieces to slow your opponents down. Raspberry Jam runs a higher density than Scavenger Hunt, but there are some common themes. Both decks aim to punish artifacts and non-creature spells, but Raspberry Jam focuses on activated abilities, while Scavenger Hunt prioritizes Grave Hate. The previously mentioned stacks pieces all hurt Razakats, so it only runs Notion Thief and the Blue Augur. At a whopping 10 mana, the deck never intends to actually cast it, instead using it as a backup for Razaketh. For card advantage and selection, the impact of color identity, the commander, and speed are very clear. Adaptive Markov is the fastest, running Ad Nauseam and Peer into the Abyss. It also runs cards that take advantage of the tokens produced by the Eminence ability. One choice that jumped out is Liliana's Standard Bearer, which is only effective after a board wipe, and board wipes aren't that common in CEDH. Dabduin uses cheap artifacts and spells in place of Ad Nauseam and Peer into the Abyss, which makes sense considering Kaalia's ability to cheat big creatures into play raises the average CMC. On that note, it runs Doom Whisper and Villas, Broker of Blood, to take advantage of that, or as backups for Razaketh. Razakats gets to enjoy the blue staples and adds in Consecrated Sphinx as yet another backup for Razaketh. Notably, it excludes Necrobones, which is present in every other deck. The most likely reason for this is the triple black mana requirement. Razakats is 4 colors and has access to dorks, so the mana base and ramp will veer towards green. Scavenger Hunt has an aristocrat theme going on, which synergizes well with Nikara. Raspberry Jam relies heavily on creature-based card draw, as one of its win conditions is pumping its creatures and swinging in. Similar to the interaction and stacks sections, the non-blue decks supplement their card draw with a greater amount of tutors. Adaptive Markov runs some of the standard suite of tutors used in fast decks, with the exception of Mausoleum Secrets, which is fairly uncommon. However, it does synergize very well with the number of creatures being run. I am surprised that it's not running more tutors like Gamble, as faster decks normally have a higher density of tutors. Dabdowin runs some of the other standard tutors for fast decks, but does notably run Runescarred Demon, which works well with the World Gorger Dragon combo. Cheating the demon to play lets you grab the card you need to get the loop going, and the ETB trigger gives you unbounded tutors. It also excludes Diabolic Intent, unlike the other decks, as it doesn't have the dorks like the green decks or the vampires produced by Edgar Markov. In addition to the 3 tutors commonly seen in blue and green decks, Razakats runs Intuition. It doesn't necessarily run any specific piles that win the game on the spot, but it can be used to find interaction, ways to discard, or, more commonly, 3 animation spells. Scavenger Hunt, lacking the explosiveness of the Mardu decks, notably runs Buried Alive and Eladamri's Call. Raspberry Jam runs not just the tutors run in Scavenger Hunt, but also an enormous amount of other tutors. This ensures that it hits the necessary stacks pieces early on to lock out your opponents as soon as possible. Moving to the ramp, there's a sharp difference in the decks that have access to green and those that don't. Adaptive Markov especially is unique, running rituals in addition to artifacts. This lets the early turns be especially explosive. I am confused by Weathered Wayfarer, as it's not even ramp, it's a slow card in a fast deck. Songs of the Damned is an unusual choice, but it fits into a Razaketh line including 4 0 CMC creatures to generate additional mana and tutors. Dabdowin plays a more conservative package of ramp and rituals, as it's not an ad nos. This involves dropping many of the rituals and adding Rakdos Signet. It still has an echo of Adaptive Markov speed, but it is better suited to last into the mid-game. All of the green decks run more dorks, as they not only provide early acceleration, but are great Razaketh fodder. Razakats runs the staples in the colors. There's not much to say about this. Scavenger Hunt is only notable for a slight decrease in the amount of ramp, which lines up with its game plan of slowing the speed of the game down. It excludes Bloomtender, Faeburrow Elder, and Priest of Titania. Raspberry Jam takes this even further, excluding Smothering Tithe, Chromox, and Mox Diamond. Even for a stacks deck, this seems extreme, especially considering it doesn't supplement it with more dorks like Faeburrow Elder. The final section covers miscellaneous cards, or cards that don't fit into any of the other categories. Adaptive Markov runs Angel's Grace for its synergies with Ad Nauseam and Necrobones, as well as some fodder for Razaketh. The 0 CMC creatures synergize especially well with Songs of the Damned, and there's a line for Razaketh that generates mana and tutors using them. Scavenger Hunt runs Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite. With the amount of creatures being run, this allows you to pressure your opponent's life totals down and may be able to win through beatdown. This is similarly reflected in Raspberry Jam, which also runs the Tender Shoot Dryad to provide attackers. The deck also runs Destiny Spinner to ensure its creatures hit the board. Finally, Razakats runs Phantasmal Image, which serves a wide variety of purposes as it can copy any creature on the board. In this video, we covered how the card choices of Razaketh decks are defined by the commander synergies, the color identity, especially the lack of blue and green, and the speed of the deck. Credit goes to Irarule, Flash Andretti, Syntapedantic, Noobzars, and Shaper for the decks, and Scryfall for the images. The link to each of the deck lists is in the description, as well as the spreadsheet that I used to compare and contrast the decks. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Let me know which deck was your favorite in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Additionally, the format for this episode is different from that of the first, so feel free to let me know which one you prefer in the comments. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you at the next upkeep for another episode of Recurring Insight.